Gunfire cracked across the Texas desert like thunder. Emily Rains pressed herself against splintered wood, her fingers buried deep in her dog's golden fur. At 15, she'd never seen violence, but she could hear it, the sharp pop of rifles, boots pounding dirt, men shouting in Spanish. Tango stayed perfectly still beside her. No whimpering. No trembling. Just controlled, tactical silence. The cartel men were getting closer. Emily heard their voices through the shed walls, discussing her grandfather, discussing her. Then something happened that made no sense. The voices stopped. Confused murmurs. Then fear. One man whispered urgently in broken English, "The dog, it's not normal." Because Tango wasn't just barking anymore. He was moving his body in precise, calculated gestures. Military hand signals. Professional. Lethal. Tango wasn't just Emily's guide dog. He was something the world had forgotten. Emily Rains had lived in darkness for 15 years, but she'd never felt truly blind until the day her parents died. The car accident took everything, her mother's laugh, her father's terrible jokes, and the certainty that tomorrow would always come. The funeral stretched endlessly. Black suits whispered condolences she couldn't process. Flowers wilted in arrangements she'd never see. Her mother, Lieutenant Sarah Rains, had served 3 tours overseas. Her father taught high school history. Normal people living normal lives until a drunk driver turned their sedan into twisted metal on Highway 90. Now Emily lived with Grandpa Joe on his ranch outside Brackettville, Texas, where the desert stretched endlessly toward Mexico and trouble crossed the border like tumbleweeds. The ranch house was old, built in the 1940s with thick adobe walls and narrow windows. Emily had memorized every creak in the floorboards, every door that stuck, every loose step on the front porch. Grandpa Joe was 73, a Vietnam veteran with arthritis in his knees and stories he rarely told. He'd raised cattle once, but now the pastures held only memories and mesquite trees. Social Security barely covered the taxes. Emily's survivor benefits helped, but money was always tight. Tango had arrived 3 months after the funeral. Not from a typical guide dog organization, but through some military connection her grandfather never fully explained. A man in civilian clothes delivered him personally, spent 2 hours going over commands, then disappeared in a government sedan. The dog was different from the start. Most Labradors were friendly, eager to please, sometimes scattered in their attention. Tango was calmer, more focused, almost human in his understanding. His training went beyond basic guide work. He could detect changes in Emily's blood sugar before she felt them. He'd wake her from nightmares with gentle nudges. He seemed to understand tactical situations that no civilian dog should recognize. While other guide dogs learned to navigate sidewalks and crosswalks, Tango seemed to understand terrain, threats, tactical movement. He'd position himself between Emily and strangers, assess rooms before entering, and sometimes wake her at night for no apparent reason. His attention to detail was extraordinary. He'd stop her before stepping on loose boards, guide her around obstacles she hadn't detected, and alert her to sounds she couldn't identify. During thunderstorms, most dogs cowered or sought comfort. Tango would position himself at the front door, alert but calm, like he was standing guard. When strangers visited, he'd catalog their movements, their scents, their intentions. Emily felt his assessments through the harness, tension for threats, relaxation for friends. The local veterinarian, Dr. Martinez, had examined Tango during his first checkup. He'd found old scars on the dog's legs and chest. Healed bullet wounds. Surgery marks from professional veterinary care. When Emily asked about them, Dr. Martinez had been evasive. "This dog's seen some action," he'd said quietly. "Military working dogs sometimes get rehomed after service." But he hadn't explained the extensive dental work, the perfectly healed fractures, or the way Tango's eyes tracked movements with tactical precision. The town was changing around them. Emily heard it in conversations at the gas station, in the way voices dropped when certain names were mentioned. Cartel influence was spreading north like spilled oil, seeping into honest communities. Local businesses were paying protection money. Sheriff's deputies were finding bodies in the desert. Good families were moving away. Brackettville had always been rough around the edges. Close to the border, far from major cities, populated by ranchers, military retirees, and people who wanted to be left alone. But the violence was escalating. Drug smuggling routes were shifting. Territory wars were spilling across international boundaries. Emily felt the tension during their weekly trips to town. Conversations stopped when she entered stores. People were polite but nervous. Even Tango's behavior changed, more alert, more protective, constantly scanning for threats Emily couldn't perceive. That Tuesday morning in November, while buying supplies at Hernandez Market, Emily overheard 2 men talking by the coffee machine. She was selecting canned goods when their conversation caught her attention. New crew crossed last night. From Coahuila. They ain't like the others. How so? Military trained. Real soldiers, not just thugs with guns. Word is they're looking for something specific. Like what? Don't know. But they're asking questions about military families. Anyone with government connections. Emily's hand found Tango's harness. He was perfectly still, but she felt tension in his muscles, like a coiled spring. His breathing had changed, shallow, controlled, alert. The men continued talking, but their voices dropped lower. Emily caught fragments, references to specific ranches, families who'd moved away, federal agents who'd been asking questions. When they left the store, Tango guided her to the truck with unusual urgency. His normal pace was steady, predictable. Today he moved like they were being followed. Grandpa Joe noticed immediately. What's got him spooked? Emily repeated the conversation she'd overheard. Her grandfather was quiet for a long moment, his hands tight on the steering wheel. Your mother never told you much about her work overseas, he said finally. She was a translator. Language specialist. Another long pause. Sometimes translators do more than translate. That night, Tango woke Emily at 3 a.m. No barking, just a gentle nudge against her shoulder. His tail was low, ears forward, body tense. Emily sat up in bed, listening to the desert silence. Most nights, the ranch was full of sound, wind through mesquite, cattle moving in distant pastures, night birds calling. Tonight was different. The silence was absolute, unnatural. Tango led her to the bedroom window. Emily couldn't see through the glass, but she could feel his attention focused on something outside. His muscles were coiled, ready. Professional. For the first time, Emily wondered if her mother's death had really been an accident. The next morning, Emily and her grandfather drove into town for supplies. The local diner, Casa Miguel, was busier than usual, but the conversations were hushed, nervous. Emily could smell fear sweat mixed with coffee and bacon grease. Miguel Rodriguez had owned the diner for 20 years. He'd served Emily's family countless breakfast meals, always remembering her preference for whole wheat toast and extra butter. Today his voice shook when he greeted them. Morning, Joe. Emily. Usual table? But before they could answer, 3 men in expensive boots and cheap shirts entered. Emily couldn't see them, but she could smell gun oil and cigarettes. Their voices carried authority and menace that made the entire restaurant go quiet. Miguel, one said, sliding into the corner booth. We need to talk. Emily heard chairs scrape, footsteps, nervous breathing from other customers. The men spoke with accents that weren't local, Mexican, but educated, professional. You got a nice place here, the leader continued. Good food. Loyal customers. Be a shame if something happened to it. Miguel's voice was barely a whisper. I already told your people, I can't pay more. Business is slow. Business gonna be real slow if you don't find our money. $2,000 a month, every month. Protection fee. Protection from what? Harsh laughter. From us. Emily felt Tango's attention sharpen. Through the harness, she sensed his tactical assessment. 3 targets, armed, positioned to control exits. His breathing changed to combat rhythm. Look, Miguel, a second voice said. We ain't unreasonable. But this town's changing. New management. New rules. What management? Coahuila Cartel. We're expanding operations. Your little diner sits right on our new smuggling route. Emily heard papers rustling, boots scraping linoleum. The conversation was low but clear in the morning quiet. Federal agents been sniffing around, the third man said. Asking questions about military families. Anyone with government connections. You know anything about that? No, nothing. What about the Rains family? Old man and his blind granddaughter? Emily's blood went cold. Grandpa Joe's hand found her shoulder, a warning to stay quiet. They keep to themselves, Miguel said carefully. That girl's mother was military, right? Army intelligence? Just a translator, far as I know. Translators don't get buried with full military honors. Translators don't have classified files. Emily heard chairs scrape. Footsteps approached their table. Tango's muscles coiled like springs. Morning, folks, the leader said pleasantly. Beautiful day, isn't it? Grandpa Joe's voice was steady. Morning. Joe Rains, right? This your granddaughter? That's right. Heard you lost your daughter couple years back. Sarah, wasn't it? Military woman. Real shame. Emily felt heat radiating from her grandfather's body. Anger, carefully controlled. We don't talk about family business with strangers, Grandpa Joe said. Oh, we ain't strangers. We're neighbors now. Gonna be seeing a lot of each other. That's when Tango moved. Emily felt him shift position, placing himself between her and the strangers. One of the men noticed. Nice dog. Well trained. He reached toward Tango. Emily heard a sharp whistle of air, then a solid thunk. Boot connecting with ribs. Tango yelped, surprised more than hurt. But what happened next changed everything. Emily shot to her feet. Don't touch him. The men laughed. One said something in Spanish that made the others chuckle. But Tango didn't cower or retreat. He stood perfectly still, head raised, eyes locked on the man who'd kicked him. His tail was low but steady. His breathing was controlled, professional. Emily had never heard him growl like that, not angry or frightened, but cold. Calculating. Like he was taking measurements. Easy there, dog, the man said, but his voice had changed. Nervous. We should go, Grandpa Joe said, standing carefully. They left money on the table and walked toward the door. Emily heard whispered conversations, nervous breathing from other customers. But the cartel men were quiet now, watching. As they reached the parking lot, Emily heard one of them talking urgently on a phone. Yeah, it's them. The Rains family. And that dog. There's something not right about that dog. The drive home was silent until they reached the ranch gate. Her grandfather said quietly. There's things about your mother I never told you. What things? She wasn't just a translator. She was deep cover intelligence. Worked with special operations units overseas. Emily felt the world shift beneath her. Why didn't you tell me? She made me promise. Said it was safer if you didn't know. And Tango? A long pause. Your mother had a handler. Military working dog specialist. When she died, some strings got pulled. Tango was supposed to be retired, but instead he came to protect me. Your mother knew the work would follow her home eventually. She wanted you to have protection. That afternoon, black trucks began circling their ranch. Emily heard engines idling on the county road, doors slamming, boots on gravel. Men with radios conducting surveillance. Grandpa Joe loaded his old Remington shotgun, checked the shells, positioned it by the front door. If anything happens, you stick with Tango. You trust him completely. You understand? What do you mean, if anything happens? Your mother left something here. Something those men want. What? I don't know. She said it was insurance. Information that would protect you if her past ever caught up. Emily heard helicopters in the distance, growing closer. The sound made Tango alert, ears forward, body tense, but not afraid. Familiar. That evening, as the sun set over the Mesquite Flats, Emily sat on the front porch with Tango beside her. The desert was beautiful in ways she could only imagine, vast, eternal, painted in colors she'd never see. What are you, boy? She whispered, stroking his fur. What did Mom train you to do? Tango leaned against her leg, warm and solid and utterly loyal. But beneath his calm exterior, Emily sensed something else, lethal potential, carefully controlled. The attack came at sunset. Emily smelled smoke before she heard the flames, their barn catching fire, orange light dancing through windows she couldn't see. The structure was old, dry wood and hay that caught fast. Gunshots cracked across the desert. Glass exploded in the kitchen. Her grandfather shouted her name. Get to the root cellar. But men were already inside the house. Emily heard boots on hardwood, voices in Spanish, furniture crashing. Tango pressed against her leg, guiding her toward the back door. They made it to the yard before the real firefight started. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness like deadly fireworks. Emily heard her grandfather's Remington booming, cartel weapons answering with automatic fire. Neighbors from the Johnson Ranch arrived with hunting rifles and shotguns. Tommy Johnson, a Marine veteran, took position behind his pickup truck and began laying down covering fire. Get the girl out of here, he shouted. Sarah Johnson grabbed Emily's arm, pulling her toward their truck. In the chaos and smoke, Tango disappeared. Emily called his name, but the gunfire was too loud. The last thing she heard was his bark, not panicked or frightened, but purposeful. Like he was giving orders. Carlos Herrera had been a Marine before the money got tight and the cartel got generous. 8 years in the Corps, 2 tours in Afghanistan, an honorable discharge and a thank you for your service handshake. The VA offered therapy and job training. The cartel offered $50,000 a year and all the excitement he could handle. Now he worked logistics for the Coahuila crew, moving guns and drugs across the border. It was ugly work, but it paid better than anything civilian life offered. His military training made him valuable: tactical planning, weapons expertise, operational security. The Rains job was supposed to be simple. Burn them out, search the property, find whatever intelligence the dead woman had hidden. Professional intimidation with minimal casualties. But nothing had gone according to plan. Carlos was checking the perimeter of the burned ranch when he heard the growling. Low, controlled, tactical. The kind of sound that made his military training kick in: alert, assess, act. Just a dog, muttered Santos, the crew leader. Probably hurt and scared. Santos was street smart but had never served. He understood urban warfare, gang tactics, intimidation strategies. But he'd never worked with military units, never seen professional soldiers operate. Carlos knew better. He'd heard that sound before, in forward operating bases across Afghanistan. Working dogs. Military precision. Controlled aggression. The first man went down silently. Rodriguez, one of the newer recruits, stepping into what looked like empty desert. Carlos heard a soft snap, then Rodriguez's surprised grunt as he disappeared into a perfectly camouflaged pit trap. What the hell? Santos spun in circles, rifle raised. The second casualty was Martinez, their explosives expert. He triggered a tripwire that sent him tumbling into a wash filled with mesquite thorns and broken glass. Professional work. Textbook battlefield preparation. We got a problem, Carlos said into his radio. What kind of problem? Military problem. Then Carlos saw him. The Golden Lab, maybe 60 pounds, moving through the darkness like a ghost. But he wasn't just moving randomly, he was positioning himself with tactical precision. Carlos pulled out his night vision scope, focused on the dog. What he saw made his blood run cold. The animal was giving hand signals. Perfect military gestures, executed with canine precision. Left flank. Halt. Approach with caution. Enemy in sight. Jesus Christ, Carlos whispered. That's a seal dog. Santos laughed, but nervously. You're losing it, Marine. No, man. I seen these in classified briefings. Multipurpose canines. MPCs. They're not just attack dogs, they're weapons systems. Carlos had attended joint operations briefings in Kandahar. Navy SEAL units sometimes used specially trained dogs for reconnaissance, explosives detection, even coordinated attacks. These animals could operate radios, call in airstrikes, coordinate with human teams using complex signal systems. The dog paused in a shaft of moonlight, looked directly at Carlos through his scope, and gave a clear signal: "You're in my kill zone." Carlos had seen that gesture before. It meant friendly forces were positioned, targets were acquired, and violence was imminent. He ran. Back at the staging area, Carlos tried to explain to Santos and the remaining crew members. We need to pull back. That dog's military trained. Professional level. It's a pet, Santos snapped. A blind girl's pet. No, man. I seen the signals. That dog's been to war. He's coordinating defensive positions like he's got a full squad backing him up. But Santos wasn't listening. He was already planning the next assault, calling for reinforcements from the main crew. Carlos thought about the classified briefings he'd attended. Dogs that could operate complex equipment. Dogs that could communicate with helicopter crews. Dogs that could coordinate tactical operations across multiple units. And sometimes, when their handlers died, those dogs went missing. Retired through back channels. Hidden in plain sight. Placed with families who needed protection but couldn't know the truth. The blind girl's guide dog wasn't just a guide dog. He was a soldier waiting for orders. Santos, Carlos said urgently. That dog might be connected to federal networks. Military communications. If he's calling in backup. From who? It's a dog. From whoever trained him. SEAL teams don't abandon their assets. Santos studied Carlos for a long moment. You really think a dog is calling the Navy? Carlos looked at the ranch in the distance, at the perfectly executed defensive positions, at the tactical precision that had already cost them 3 men. I think that dog is doing exactly what he was trained to do. Protect his asset and call for backup. An hour later, they heard helicopters in the distance. Emily refused to stay at the Johnson Ranch. The deputies were too scared to return to her property, and her grandfather was in the county hospital with smoke inhalation and a dislocated shoulder from diving for cover. She knew her ranch better than anyone, every fence post, every dip in the dirt road, every mesquite tree. She'd memorized the terrain through years of walking with Tango, building a mental map more detailed and accurate than any GPS system. At 2 a.m., she slipped out of the Johnson house. Sarah Johnson would check on her in the morning and panic, but Emily couldn't wait. Tango was out there, possibly wounded, definitely alone. The walk took 40 minutes across open desert. Emily navigated by memory, scent, and intuition. The burned barn smelled like charcoal and melted metal. The house reeked of gunpowder and fear. She found Tango by the old water trough, methodically licking a bullet graze on his left shoulder. When her fingers touched his fur, he didn't startle or pull away. He'd been waiting. "Hey boy," she whispered. "What did you do out here?" Tango nudged her hand towards something in the dirt. Emily's fingers found it, a tactical radio, military issue, still warm from use. The display showed active channels, encrypted frequencies, signal strength indicators. Vehicle engines rumbled in the distance, getting closer. Emily and Tango hid in the burnt remains of the hayloft, where charred beams created perfect concealment. Through gaps in the damaged wood, she heard boots on gravel, voices in Spanish and English, radio chatter coordinating search patterns. 5 men down, someone reported. Rodriguez in a pit trap, Martinez tangled in wire, 3 others hit by defensive positions. From a dog? That ain't no regular dog. Carlos was right. This is military-level tactical work. Emily pressed herself against Tango's side. He was perfectly still, but she could feel his heartbeat, steady, controlled, professional. One voice rose above the others. Santos, the crew leader she'd heard at the diner. "Find the girl. She's the key to this whole operation." What operation? Her mother wasn't just army intelligence. She was deep cover. Worked with special operations units for years. The old man's been hiding something on this ranch. Emily's blood went cold. Her mother had been a translator, nothing more. At least, that's what she'd always been told. But Tango's muscles tensed against her arm. Like he remembered something important. "That dog's protecting more than just the girl," Santos continued. "He's protecting whatever Lieutenant Sarah Raines hid here before she died." "You think she really hid something?" "Intel suggests she had insurance files. Classified information about cartel operations, federal investigations, witness protection protocols. Information that could destroy our entire network. And the dog knows where it is?" "Dogs remember everything. Especially military dogs. They're trained to protect assets, maintain operational security, execute mission objectives even after their handlers are gone." Emily's hand found something else in the debris, her mother's old satellite phone, hidden in a survival kit behind the water heater. Still charged. Still connected to military networks her mother had programmed years ago. She thought about the signals Tango had been giving, the precise tactical movements, the way he'd coordinated defensive positions like a professional soldier. Maybe he wasn't just protecting her. Maybe he was protecting secrets that could get them both killed. But maybe those same secrets could save them. Emily activated the satellite phone's emergency beacon. The device hummed to life, searching for network connections, routing through encrypted channels her mother had established. Her message was simple but specific: Whispering Pines Ranch. Grid reference 29.3128 north, 100.4061 west. 7 armed hostiles. Civilian in danger. Requesting immediate tactical support. But she added something else, words she'd heard her mother use during late-night phone calls. Authentication code, Tango Mike 77. Asset protection protocol active. Tango's ears perked up at his name. Or maybe at the authentication code. The response came 20 minutes later, not through the phone, but through Tango himself. He suddenly stood, alert, head tilted like he was listening to frequencies Emily couldn't detect. Then he began to move with purpose Emily had never seen before. Tango led Emily through the ranch with impossible precision, avoiding areas where she heard voices, stepping around obstacles she couldn't see, navigating by tactical instincts that seemed almost supernatural. He stopped at the old root cellar, a concrete bunker her grandfather had built during the Cold War. Emily had explored it as a child, but tonight Tango's nose nudged her hand toward a hidden panel she'd never noticed. Inside, she found equipment that didn't belong in a civilian bunker: radios, night vision gear, tactical vests, encrypted communication devices. Her mother's hidden cache. "She wasn't just a translator," Emily whispered. Tango whined softly, nuzzled her cheek with unusual gentleness. Then he did something that made her heart stop. He began to signal. Not random movements, but deliberate communication Emily could feel through his harness, through the way he positioned her body, through subtle pressure against her leg. "Take cover. Friendlies approaching. Multiple hostiles in sight. Prepare for contact." Emily couldn't see the gestures, but she understood their meaning through months of partnership, through the bond that made them a team. In the distance, she heard new engines. Different vehicles. Moving with military precision instead of cartel chaos. Border patrol. Local law enforcement. And something else, the deep rumble of federal tactical vehicles, helicopter rotors beating the desert air. Federal agents. "Drop your weapons." The cartel men were shouting now, confused, surrounded by forces they couldn't see coming. Gunfire erupted across the ranch. Automatic weapons answered by precision rifle fire. Professional military tactics coordinated with local law enforcement. Emily pressed herself against the cellar wall, Tango's body shielding her from stray rounds. But one cartel member had flanked the federal positions, moving through desert terrain toward their hiding place. She heard him breathing hard, maybe 20 feet away. Smelled his sweat and fear and desperation. Tango went perfectly still. Emily felt him calculate distance, timing, threat assessment. Then he moved. She heard the man's surprised grunt, the sound of a body hitting hard-packed dirt, then silence. When the shooting stopped, Emily emerged from the cellar. Hands found her shoulders. Paramedics, federal agents, her grandfather's voice calling her name from an ambulance. A border patrol agent knelt beside her. "Miss, that dog of yours just coordinated one hell of a defensive operation. Where did you get him?" Emily thought about her mother's secrets, about the equipment hidden in the cellar, about the way Tango had moved through darkness like a trained soldier executing mission objectives. "He was a gift," she said simply. The agent was quiet for a moment. Then, "From who?" Emily smiled, tears streaming down her face. "From someone who knew we'd need a guardian angel." Later, as EMTs treated Tango's bullet wound, Emily overheard federal agents debriefing. Fragments of conversation that filled in missing pieces. Encrypted communications traced to SOCOM networks. Tactical coordination suggests professional military training. Lieutenant Sarah Rains maintained active security clearance until her death. Insurance files recovered from the cache could prosecute half the cartel leadership. One agent approached Emily directly. "Your mother left detailed intelligence about cartel operations. Federal prosecutors are calling it the most comprehensive organized crime database they've ever seen. She was just a translator." "Ma'am, your mother was a deep cover intelligence officer. She spent years documenting cartel networks, money laundering operations, corruption in law enforcement. Her files are going to put a lot of bad people in prison." Emily absorbed this information slowly. And Tango? Multipurpose canine. Trained by Naval Special Warfare Units for intelligence operations. When your mother died, certain people made sure he found his way to you. Why? Because your mother knew her work would eventually put you in danger. She wanted you to have protection that could think, fight, and call for backup when needed. Emily knelt beside Tango as a veterinarian sutured his wound. He looked at her with intelligent eyes that seemed to hold memories of battles fought in distant places. "You've been protecting me all along, haven't you?" she whispered. Tango licked her hand gently. Then, for the first time since she'd known him, he barked. Not alert or warning, but simple acknowledgement. Mission accomplished. Epilogue. The warrior who saw for her 6 months later, Emily knelt beside a small grave marker under the old oak tree behind the rebuilt ranch house. The headstone was simple black granite. Tango guardian, warrior, brother. Her new guide dog, a young German shepherd named Scout, waited patiently beside her. Scout was well-trained, professional, everything a guide dog should be. But he wasn't Tango. Around Emily's neck hung a chain with Tango's old military tag, the one that had been hidden in his collar all along. The tag bore a simple inscription, Multipurpose Canine. Naval Special Warfare Unit. Handler, Lieutenant Sarah Rains. Her mother's name. Her mother's dog. Her mother's final gift. Emily traced the letters with her finger, understanding finally complete. Her mother hadn't just been intelligence. She'd been a SEAL handler, working deep cover operations that required canine partners trained for combat, reconnaissance, and tactical communication. When Sarah died, Tango had been officially retired. But retirement meant reassignment to protect the one thing Sarah had loved most, her daughter. The ranch was quiet now. Federal prosecutions had destroyed the Coahuila cartel's operations in South Texas. Her grandfather was healing, stronger than before. The town felt safer. But Emily understood truths that others might never grasp. Some warriors never needed medals or recognition. They measured success not in enemies defeated, but in the people they kept safe. Tango had been both her guide dog and her guardian angel. A soldier who'd traded battlefields for a different kind of service. A hero who'd spent his final years ensuring a blind girl could walk safely through a dangerous world. The federal agents had offered to find Emily another military working dog, but she declined. Scout was perfect for normal life, patient, gentle, predictable. She didn't need another warrior. Tango had fought her battles and won. Emily stood, Scout's harness firm in her hand. The sun was setting over the Texas desert, painting the sky in colors she'd never seen but could feel in the warmth on her face. "Come on, Scout," she said softly. "Let's go home." As they walked toward the house, Emily could have sworn she heard something in the desert wind. A soft bark. A loyal companion, still watching over her, still protecting the things that mattered most. Some bonds transcend sight. Some loyalty transcends death. And some warriors never truly leave the battlefield. They just find new ways to serve, new people to protect, new missions that matter more than their own lives. Tango had been all of these things. A soldier, a guardian, a friend who'd seen her through darkness both literal and metaphorical. In the end, he'd done what all the best warriors do. He'd made the world safer for someone who couldn't fight for herself. And in doing so, he'd found the most honorable mission of all. Protecting innocence. Serving love. Ensuring that tomorrow would always come, no matter how dark today might seem. Emily smiled, feeling Tango's presence in the evening breeze, in Scout's steady gait, in the safety that surrounded her like armor she couldn't see but always felt. Some warriors never need to be seen to be remembered. They live on in the lives they've saved, the fears they've conquered, the love they've made possible. Tango had been that kind of warrior. The very best kind.